locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
You're tuned in to NightVision Radio, exposing the truth, one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies to keep it all from us. Welcome to NightVision Radio. And good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I'm excited about tonight's show, one of our favorite subjects, UFOs. But just before we get into it, I want to give a couple of little quick notes here. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who friended me on Facebook this week. I don't know what happened, but there was a big rush, so I can only think that it came from Inception Radio. So that's really wonderful. Thanks so much. And also, I'd like to invite you to go over to NightVision Radio page on Facebook and like it too. We appreciate that so much. Now, tonight, my guest is a scientist, a professor, and an author. His name is Dr. Robert Davis, and we're going to be talking about his research, which he reveals in his book, The UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe? And we're going to see if we can get the answer to that question by the end of the night. We'll see. Welcome, Dr. Davis.
Well, hi, René. Thank you so much for inviting me on your excellent show. I'm a big fan. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you agreeing to come. I know it's a little bit late for you, much later than for me here on the West Coast. We're on opposite ends here. So I do appreciate that. And I hope you've got your sweet drink right there, so that you can be refreshed at every possible opportunity.
I sure do.
Now, I mentioned, now what's a nice scientist like you, doing in a subject matter like UFOs, I guess would be my first question. We don't see that a lot, as you know.
And unfortunately, we don't, because the scientific community in general regards ufology as a pseudoscience for a variety of reasons. And maybe we'll talk further about that. But before I was a scientist, as a young child, I guess I watched too many Star Trek episodes, which got my interest, certainly, in UFOs, among other related topics. So I had a lifelong interest in this phenomenon, but what really sparked my interest to write a book was when I saw two orange orbs in the night sky with my wife while vacationing in Sedona, Arizona back in 2012. They suddenly appeared, and they remained stationary for a period of time and then suddenly winked out. Now, that could certainly be some unusual atmospheric phenomenon like plasma, for instance, an ionized gas, or as many may contend, represents a form of non-human intelligence. But that remains to be seen. The point is, we don't have certainly a good understanding of this phenomenon or these unusual aerial events that thousands, if not millions, of individuals worldwide have experienced for many years, decades, maybe even thousands of years. So,
yeah. I mean, it seems to, obviously, it seems logical to conclude that we would not be the only intelligent beings in this vast universe. We are in a very, young galaxy, on a very young and a very tiny planet. And why this would be the only spot in the universe that could support some kind of life or intelligent life. It seems really to be illogical, to think that would not be the case. But that's a little bit different, kind of accepting that, than accepting the fact that, oh, yes, and we're being visited, and, yes, some of us are being abducted, or some of us are having up close and personal experiences with beings from other planets. Because what we have is a real lot of anecdotal evidence and very, very little physical evidence of these things. Now, there are some good photographic evidence of the phenomenon, but in your mind, what is the best evidence?
I couldn't have said it better than you just did, Renee. That's an excellent overview. As far as the best evidence is concerned, that's, you ask different ufologists that question and you come up with many different answers. But I think there are several different types of incidents that I consider at least to be the best evidence, and one of which I have to refer to the conclusions made by J. Allen Hynek back in the 70s. He was he's an astrophysicist and the director of scientific investigation of Project Blue Book and Project Grudge and Sign. And based on his experience as a scientific advisor, he initially was a skeptic, but then
wasn't that where we got the swamp gas
exactly
idea?
exactly.
Was originally
He said
Dr.
that
Hynek,
was
but I do agree.
Exactly. And
I do agree that he evolved in the subject matter, and he did make great strides in those days in some of the early research. But what were some of his conclusions that impressed you?
Well, based on his extensive research, interviewing hundreds of individuals, he regarded the phenomenon, beyond our terrestrial mode of thought. He actually formulated the opinion that this was a phenomenon either of extraterrestrial or even extra-dimensional in nature. But he was a believer, and he based his belief, again, on the reports by hundreds of individuals that these UFOs are luminous, they're surrounded by a haze, they can become invisible, and then a couple of seconds later they appear a distance away. They change their physical dimensions, or he said they shape shift, as many people who observe UFOs also explain, even to our present day. They tend to wobble, then remain stationary, they're noiseless, they have no indication of a propulsion system, and they appear to defy gravity and inertia. And they can be stationary, they have immediate stops and angular maneuvers, and when they do move, they move at extreme velocities, up to several thousand miles per hour. And they even produce electromechanical effects and physical ground traces. So they also even induce physiological effects in humans, such as sensations of heat, paralysis, nausea, among others. So, that's evidence from his observations. But there are also other types of evidence that get my attention, which I regard as the best evidence, and that concerns the appearance of UFOs over nuclear missile bases here in the United States as well as in Russia. And we can go into great detail about that, but basically, they are observed over these nuclear missile sites, as confirmed by ground personnel, and these objects, which hover over these missiles, have deactivated and then reactivate the missiles, as if to provide some kind of message, as some people think, such as, don't mess around with these things; they're not good for you. but
Hmm.
I regard that. There's a lot more to those incidents, but I regard that as pretty compelling in nature. And there
Well,
are certainly many other incidents that we can get into, and we will address that, I'm sure, over the course of the
we
show.
heard that effect as well in the Rendlesham Forest story. That there were nuclear missiles, I guess, on base that had been disabled during this event, whatever it was that was happening there. But you're right. Some of the best evidence to me is some of the anecdotal evidence by experts like pilots and military.
Well, indeed, and that brings up another incident regarding the incident in Tehran, Iran, back in 1976. Pilot Jafari contended that he observed a UFO which released 4 objects, and one he tried unsuccessfully to fire upon. Another followed him, and one landed, he said, on the desert floor, and they took off at velocities of 2,000 to 3,000 miles per hour. And the officials who studied this incident said that it's a classic case that meets all the criteria necessary to validate the phenomenon, because the object was seen by multiple witnesses from different locations. The credibility of many of the witnesses was very high, which included an Air Force general, the air crews, and the radar operators. So the visual sightings by the pilot were confirmed by radar. They also experienced the electromagnetic effects on the aircraft, and there are even physiological effects on the crew members. So that I think was one also of the most compelling pieces of evidence that support an aerial phenomenon that defies logical explanation. And that's not the only one regarding pilots who have experienced similar types of episodes.
Pilots and astronauts as well.
Indeed. And there are also some evidence by astronauts, some of which is subject to some controversy. But there are, let's say, Gordon Cooper, an astronaut in the Apollo and Gemini mission. Well, he wasn't up in space, but he was somewhere in the Southwest, where he observed a UFO land on the desert. And anybody can watch a YouTube video of his discussion of this incident. He saw it land in the desert again. Beings came out of it, went back in, and then it took off at tremendous speeds. It suddenly disappeared. Thus, he believed the velocity was thousands of miles per hour, and it left landing traces. And he was firmly convinced, based on his experience as an Air Force pilot and, of course, as an astronaut, that incident defied explanation. And he believes that it was extraterrestrial in nature. Whether it was or not is up for speculation. But he wasn't the only astronaut. There are incidents regarding cosmonauts in Russia who also have had close encounters where UFOs, so to speak, followed their ships for a period of time. And some very unusual experiences as well. If we get into the issue of high strangeness, we can discuss more about that. But also astronaut Musgrave, who was an astronaut on the shuttle. Suddenly a UFO appeared underneath the shuttle, and its suddenness in appearance and then disappearance after it followed the shuttle for a period of time certainly made him take notice. And he, when he gave talks about this experience, he always showed the gray alien on a slide, and he says, believe it or not, they are here. They are real. Now, he was convinced that again it was not of this earth. And there are some other episodes regarding astronauts, which are somewhat debatable. But NASA contends, not surprisingly, that we have no clear evidence by our astronauts that supports the notion that this phenomenon exists and was observed by UFOs. Although a lot of people say that when Apollo 11 went towards the moon, they were followed by UFOs, and when they landed on the moon, the Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong said that they saw an unusual luminous object off in the distance. Now, again, NASA discredits that contention, and even the astronauts themselves say that that was not the case. So it's up for speculation, certainly. And again, like you said, quite accurately, it is somewhat anecdotal regarding the astronauts' experiences and pilots' experiences. But when we had that confirmation of visual and radar detection, that lends some credibility to something.
It certainly begs another explanation. If you're not going to, it's certainly evidence of something. And what is it if it's not? Basically, an unidentified flying object is just a flying object that has not been identified. So I don't understand, I guess, the whole secrecy thing. If there is a lot that the government and world governments know about the UFO subject, which I don't doubt at all, and I'm sure with all your research into Freedom of Information Act documents and all the other research that you've been doing into the subject, what is it that you think that would be the reason why they wouldn't just out with it?
That's an excellent question. And many ufologists contend that the government and military consider the phenomenon to be of significant importance. And governments worldwide have studied this phenomenon extensively. And they have set up several different types of organizations to try to better understand what regulates and governs the behavior of this aerial phenomenon. And governments, by and large, I don't think, especially our government, is going to acknowledge that we are being visited by other beings of non-earthly origin. And we can only speculate that they're not going to divulge that information if they know. And we don't know for sure if they do know, because of fear of panic, more or less, and we could only speculate. And if I was a part of the government, I would be hesitant to divulge that information to the society as well. I mean, what if they did? The stock market would crash. People would run to the bank for cash. Gold would soar. Individuals would react in probably in very bizarre ways that would be not surprising. But our society would certainly react quite significantly initially in very negative ways, details of which I'm not entirely sure, but eventually we'd go on our ways and conduct business as usual, unless, of course, these aliens have intentions that are not favorable. But if UFOs are governed by non-human intelligence, they seem to have a non-directive mission, similar to Star Trek, the hands-off approach. They don't seem to want to engage with us in any meaningful way. But our government is not going to divulge information, assuming they know. But the documents that have been obtained via the Freedom of Information Act clearly indicates that this phenomenon has been of significant importance going back to the 40s. And the memos that have been revealed through the Freedom of Information Act clearly demonstrates that to be the case. It is even regarded to be as more important, shall I say, than the atom bomb back in the 1950s. And these memos were written by generals, high-level officials, who were mystified by this phenomenon. And it is quite likely that we and Russia, among other countries, are very much engaged in doing whatever research they possibly can to better understand the phenomenon. But the point is, while the governments, military officials may have, may know that the phenomenon exists, they don't understand the who, what, and whys associated with this phenomenon. So if they reveal this information to this society where it's on CNN breaking news, they're afraid to be confronted with numerous questions by society because they don't have the answers as far as I'm concerned. And if they do, which I doubt, but if they do, they're certainly not going to reveal it to society. And in some ways, I don't blame them because of its potentially devastating effects on an individual and societal level. Now, a lot of people will contradict my viewpoint, but there could be significant negative ramifications, despite the fact that millions worldwide believe we are being visited by non-human intelligence. So,
and it seems as though, the information could be released in a way that would not induce panic. I mean, obviously, breaking news on CNN saying, the aliens are coming or they're here or they've landed or whatever, that would be very panic inducing. But if things started to come out that this is something that they've known about all along, if indeed that's true, and, we've been operating with this presence all this time, would people necessarily panic that much? I'm not sure, because people, there have been a lot of polls, Roper polls, other polls done, and it seems like a lot of people believe already that that these UFOs do exist and that they are powered by some sort of intelligent life. Would it be as big of a panic situation? And on the other hand, too, I'm having a little trouble, I guess, thinking that maybe they're being that benevolent to us, and that's that they don't have ulterior motives for not disclosing the information. Just like everything else, it seems like things are rooted in, power and money in the end. And I can see how if some of this knowledge were made public, then they would have to answer, as you said, a lot of other questions about certain things like maybe fossil fuels and different, I'm just, throwing things out that might come up. But certainly they'd have to answer, questions about why the past secrecy. But do you really feel like people would react that strongly at this stage of the game?
Well, millions would and millions would not. And it's difficult to know. Certainly those who are somewhat unbalanced, shall we say, may take it very much differently and react in an extreme negative fashion, whereas those who believe that we are being visited by non-human intelligence would be more certainly accepting. I think they'd be astonished at some level, but they're not going to react in a extreme manner, let's say. But there's no doubt there'll be sufficient calamity, shall we say, regarding our economy initially. And a lot of people will be running to their psychologists and to their banks for security purposes and for help because they'll be scared because they don't know the intention of these beings if again revealed by the government, because they may regard it as a hostile mission on their part. So we don't know
Sure.
how society is going to react. It's really based on what the non-human intelligence, if it exists, reveals, and how they behave, how they respond to us, and unless they dictate to us what their mission is, hopefully it's peaceful, obviously, as it appears to be thus far. Then it obviously the society would be more subdued and less paranoid about the fact that they are here. But the question is not whether the UFOs are operated by non-human intelligence. Well, that is one question, certainly, unless there is some other type of phenomenon that behaves in a so-called intelligent manner, as many people contend, given the way they maneuver in our skies. The alien abduction phenomenon was also associated with that phenomenon as well, among other related ufology issues. So it is very difficult to predict how society is going to react unless we are certain about their peaceful intent. And if they've been here for a long time, at least for decades, if not longer, and they have not had, assuming they're governed by beings of non-earthly origin, they have not had any negative impact on our daily operation, let's say. But again, the question is the who, what, and whys of the associated phenomenon. If it is governed by non-human intelligence, why are they here? Where are they from? And what is their mission? So that is the essence of my book. And that's where I am. I acknowledge the fact that UFOs exist. I don't think that is a debatable issue at all. The question is, what is it? And does it represent a form of intelligence of non-earthly origin? It could be extraterrestrial from another solar system, yes, or another dimension, or from possibly even our future. And those three theories abound among ufologists, and it is highly debatable in nature. So one thing we need to do, however, is to have a multidisciplinary scientific investigation, which includes scientists from a variety of different fields, such as, of course, physics, psychology, sociology, biology, among others, to engage in a formal analysis, scientific endeavor, to try to better understand what this phenomenon is all about. And a current movement by a foundation, which you may have heard, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, the acronym is FREE, is attempting to do just that. It is a fairly new foundation. It's a non-profit organization co-founded by Ray Hernandez, Mary Rodwell, and Christine Knowles. And it comprises a multidisciplinary team of scientists. I'm happy to be a member of that foundation. And it is the first attempt of a rigorous scientific investigation of trying to determine if quantum physics can be related to our consciousness and the paranormal, as a means to try to understand its relation to non-human intelligence and the types of unusual encounters experienced by so many people who contend that they have been abducted by these beings. And the similarity of their reports, by the way, are remarkable. Many of which have conscious recall, though most incidents of those who claim to be abducted have unconscious recall through regression hypnosis. Nevertheless, many who do have conscious recall have the same types of similar descriptions of their experience as those who have regression analysis to recall their experience, and that alone is a matter of concern and certainly interest. Even if they're not being abducted by aliens, the fact that their reports are so similar in nature regarding their unusual experience once being taken allegedly aboard a craft being subjected to biologic experiments, which are several in nature, and they're the outcomes of that experience on their psyche, as well as physiologic effects. That alone is an issue for psychologists and sociologists alone to study. Even if they're not being abducted, why do they have such similar experiences? At least recall and statements about such experiences. So, that alien abduction phenomenon, which certainly is associated with this phenomenon, may be the most tangible, if it's happening, if it's occurring, maybe the most tangible type of evidence that we do have, because I don't see any other types of tangible evidence that can be scientifically analyzed using scientific principles today, at least, and in the future we might have the necessary and appropriate principles which can be applied in a manner which allows us to better understand this phenomenon. And that's why that organization, FREE, has many quantum quantum physicists, among other scientists, who contend that there might be an extra-dimensional component to this phenomenon. And quantum physicists such as Stephen Hawking and Dr. Green and Dr. Kaku, these are leading theoretical physicists who believe in the multiverse theory, meaning that we have coexisting realities whereby beings, in a sense, in another dimension can access ours. And they go on by explaining how this parallel universe, in a sense, represents the origin of these beings. Obviously, we can't access other dimensions. Maybe they can access ours, and the way the behavior of these UFOs performs in terms of their shape-shifting behavior, their appearance and disappearance. Many believe that kinematic, unusual behavior of UFOs might well represent the door opening and closing, so to speak, from another dimension. And again, it's highly theoretical. I'm not contending at all that is the basis of this phenomenon. It is theoretical, but it is certainly something to explore. And I'm not going to argue with Stephen Hawking or the other leading theoretical physicists who believe in the multiverse theory or extra-dimensional hypothesis, which might, again, explain the nature and origin of this phenomenon. But I do certainly believe that on the basis of existing evidence that something very unusual is in our skies that defies explanation. And
absolutely. Can I ask you to hold that thought right there, and we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes with Dr. Robert Davis and his new book, The UFO Phenomenon. Should I Believe? We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best. Do you have a smartphone? If so, Inception Radio Network is the best app for you. Available on iTunes, Android, Samsung, and most other app stores. Just search Inception Radio Network. With the app you can listen live, check out podcasts of recent and past shows, view our videos, see what shows are coming up, who the guests are, and, via the chat room, send live questions to those guests. You know it makes sense. Check your app store now. Inception Radio Network. I'll see you there.
Hey IRN listeners, make sure you tune in to NightVision Radio with René Barnett. René will be exposing the truth, one secret at a time. When? Thursdays. Every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Where? Right here on IRN.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic. You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome back to Night Vision Radio. I'm your host, René Barnett. And if you're just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Robert Davis, author of The UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe? Boy, should I or shouldn't I? Where do we go from here? You know, I was thinking about that. It's funny just to sort of change gears just a little bit. was thinking about the title of your book today, Should I Believe? And I'm thinking, well, what are the ramifications if you do, and what are the ramifications if you don't? And I guess that's the question, should I believe? And I mean, belief is such a subjective thing. So, and could this be a subjective experience?
Well, for the most part, yes, it is. And that is part of the problem, because we have only alleged reports by individuals of their experiences with UFOs. And unfortunately, we don't have that hard, tangible evidence that provides irrefutable, unequivocal evidence, at least to the scientific community, to document, verify that we do have beings visiting our planet. Scientists, for the most part, want to apply the scientific method and, again, the scientific principles in order to better understand the nature of this phenomenon. The problem, however, is that it's likely that our current scientific principles don't apply. Even if we had a so-called flying saucer in a laboratory, which I don't think we do, although maybe we do, it's just simply not being revealed to us at the present time. And if we do, I don't know what kind of analysis they are doing on it, but that's highly unlikely. Nevertheless, I do believe, on the basis of existing evidence, both anecdotal, from very, very good witnesses, such as pilots and astronauts, and among other individuals from all walks of life, that certainly something very unusual is in our skies that defies logical explanation. And this mystery has potential important implications. And that's why we need to develop that organized research initiative to effectively study the phenomenon. And I say this because I do believe UFOs exist by their apparent physical maneuvers that cannot be logically explained, since they, in a sense, defy laws of gravity and inertia. Now, my point of view in terms of whether or not I should or should not believe does not really apply to the existence of UFOs, but again, to its nature and origin, the who, what, and whys associated with the phenomenon, as I said previously. And I don't have a clue, despite the contention by many ufologists who firmly believe and have presented their point of views on TV and radio, among other and other media forms, that they do know the answer. I have my doubts, and I don't buy into their conclusions. But certainly, after a methodical review and analysis of the evidence, I'm not convinced one way or another as to whether or not UFOs are extraterrestrial or from another space-time or a natural and or man-made phenomenon. But certainly, again, it should be obvious that people all over the world for decades and maybe thousands of years have certainly observed something very unusual in our skies. And so should I believe? Yes, you should believe that UFOs exist, especially if a pilot reports the sudden appearance and then disappearance of a silver object that accelerates at thousands of miles per hour out of sight. That's confirmed by ground radar. Or is a UFO extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional in origin, since it appears to exhibit the application of physics and engineering principles that are clearly beyond our present-day capabilities. But such evidence does not provide that irrefutable proof that alien beings are visiting Earth. Just because it, in a sense, it defies logical explanation, like the pyramids, how the pyramids were built, introducing that so-called space alien card is is justification, as justification, I should say, is quite a bold leap without additional supporting evidence. But admittedly, I can't conclusively rule out the possibility that some unexplained UFOs may be physical craft from another solar system or dimension. I simply do not know. And I doubt anybody knows for sure, despite the firm contention by many leading ufologists who claim again that they do. And I take great exception to that. So
it's always a little suspect when someone does seem to have all the answers. It's a little bit suspicious because if they do, then prove it, to everyone. But that hasn't really been done yet. While I do agree, there's a huge pile of evidence, that obviously there's something going on. But the question is, I guess not should I believe, but what is it? what because it could be, as you said, it could be nuts and bolts UFOs. It could be, machinery that's actually flying, and, some other advanced civilizations have figured out how to bend time and space or manipulate time and space in some way. That would have had to have been the case. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to make it here unless, of course, they live, hundreds of thousands of years or something like that. But couldn't it also be partially something to do with the unconscious or unconscious, and also it could be something interdimensional? It may be not all just one thing. Do you agree with that?
You're raising a very, very good point, René, and it's an excellent question, and that is a subject of controversy, but that is also a subject that many scientists are considering as a possibility, and that's why we bring up the quantum physics, which, again, while theoretical in nature, has the potential to allow us to better understand how science and our consciousness might interact in some unusual way. But the relationship between science and our consciousness and the extra-dimensional aspect may very well provide the basis for better understanding this phenomenon, because this phenomenon does tend to have a significant impact on those who have close encounters with it. There's no question that there's associated high strangeness with this phenomenon. People contend that they have psychic communication with beings on these crafts. They report missing time. Even when they see them 1,000 feet or less away, they contend that they have missing time, and they're reported to be in a different place once their missing time, it dissipates. The fact that so many have reported unusual experiences in the form of levitation, moving through walls into other crafts when they are abducted. Again, the telepathic communication and other associated so-called high strangeness with this phenomenon leads many to suspect that there is a psychic component to it. And people like J. Allen Hynek, who investigated this phenomenon for many years, along with John Mack, a leading psychiatrist from Harvard University, among other scientists and researchers, contend that it's not just a physical phenomenon. there is also that mental or psychic or conscious component to it because of its unusual effects on individuals, not only physiologically, but psychologically as well, in ways that is very hard to understand and interpret. But the evidence is really not convincing enough, at least to the skeptics, who tend to support the viewpoint that UFOs are intelligently controlled by physical craft of extraterrestrial or extradimensional origin. But many ufologists believe that there's more than enough compelling evidence that indicates that non-human intelligent beings are operating these UFOs and interacting with humans. And this perspective by those who believe in this phenomenon is based primarily on, again, their extraordinary aerial maneuvers that defy gravity and inertia, the varying sizes and shapes, classified documents, among other pieces of evidence that tend to formulate in the minds of the believers, not the skeptics, that these UFOs are under some intelligent type of control. But getting back to your specific point, there may very well be that conscious connection. And that's what the foundation, as I mentioned earlier, Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters or Experiences, known as FREE, is attempting to explore, because of the strangeness associated with this phenomenon. There are so many incidents that defy logical explanation, that I can share with you and your audience, if you wish.
I would love to. Before you do that now, is there a website for FREE for this organization?
Yes, it's experiencer.co, not com, but .co.
Experiencer.co. Okay, great. And then now, do you take in information through your website, or are you looking for information? How is it that you are gathering your data?
Well, the data is largely surveyed in nature, and those who have who feel that they have had an unusual encounter or an experience such as an abduction can take this survey, which is on that website, and there are going to be 3 phases to this research. We're now completing phase 1. We're starting phase 2. And if I may provide you and your audience with just a few results, preliminary results from these surveys. I hope I'm not going to bore you too much, but here's a question answered by approximately 700 individuals. One question that we obtained results from thus far to this question: do you believe you have observed a non-human intelligent entity? Out of the 715 who answered to that question, 57% said yes. Next question: can you describe what group of ETs have you observed? And in response to this, we get a wide range of different types of individuals, from the traditional short grays of 3 to 4 feet, 4 feet tall, the tall grays from 5 to 9 feet, your hybrids, your insectoids, your reptilians, energy beings, even various types of animals have been reported. Another question: besides seeing this non-human intelligent entity, have you interacted in any way with this entity? 74% said yes. So, again, if this is true, that might provide some very informative, useful information to help support the fact that individuals are being abducted by aliens. And if they are not, why are they reporting this? It doesn't conclusively demonstrate that we have, irrefutable evidence that people are having such close encounters with non-human intelligence, but it is something that certainly gets our attention and begs again for a serious scientific endeavor, which the Foundation, Free, is attempting to undertake using a range of scientists and quantum physics, as I mentioned earlier, to better understand if there is some type of conscious component to this experience. So
now, this 700 people, was that sort of a random selection of people, or were those people who already were interested in the UFO subject?
Yeah, these were individuals who reported to have had encounters with alien beings. They have reported to allegedly been abducted by UFOs. So, yeah, I would like to ask your audience if anyone believes that they've had this type of close encounter, to go on the website experiencer.co and take their survey, which they can find on the left side of their website. And to date, we have over 1,000 individuals who have taken the survey, and we are now going into phase 2 of the survey, which consists of additional questions, more qualitative in nature, so that they can provide more descriptive types of information about their experience, which eventually will be analyzed and hopefully written up and published in a refereed journal. Hopefully we can get more of the scientific community interested and involved, because too few scientists in general are engaged in this topic, which is very unfortunate, because most scientists are reluctant to admit to their colleagues that they are interested in this topic, for one thing, for fear of ridicule. They don't want to do research as well, because look, how much have we learned over the past few decades about UFOs? I congratulate MUFON and many other organizations who have attempted to better understand this phenomenon, and through their work among researchers, private researchers in this field, through that effort, we have learned a great deal about the behavior of the UFOs in terms of their velocity and size and shape, etc. But again, we still don't know the who, what, and whys. So we're only skimming on the surface about what this phenomenon is really all about. But since we have not made any significant progress in understanding this phenomenon, the vast majority of the scientific community doesn't want to do research in this area, because they don't feel that they're going to have any significant outcomes worthy of publication, which is needed to maintain or gain tenure. So they may feel it's an unworthy endeavor and a waste of time.
Well, and they fear, as you said, ridicule and loss of credibility somehow. As Dr. John Mack, he had the fight of his life. He had to fight for his tenure because of his involvement in the UFO subject. But if you could hang on right there, Dr. Davis, we're going to take another quick break, and we will be right back into the final half hour of Night Vision. Please stay with us.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best. Do you have a smartphone? If so, Inception Radio Network is the best app for you. Available on iTunes, Android, Samsung, and most other app stores. Just search Inception Radio Network. With the app you can listen live, check out podcasts of recent and past shows, view our videos, see what shows are coming up, who the guests are, and, via the chat room, send live questions to those guests. You know it makes sense. Check your app store now. Inception Radio Network. I'll see you there.
Hey, IRN listeners, make sure you tune in to Night Vision Radio with René Barnett. René will be exposing the truth one secret at a time. When? Thursdays. Every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Where? Right here on IRN.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic. You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome back to Night Vision Radio. I'm your host, René Barnett. We're talking with Dr. Robert Davis, author of the UFO phenomenon, Should I Believe? Now, I know in your book, Dr. Davis, you got into a lot of cases regarding high strangeness that have to do surrounding this UFO subject. Would you share with us some of your research into that area and maybe some specific cases?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. High strangeness, a term Jacques Vallée coined. You know, getting back, though, initially to J. Allen Hynek and John Mack, they initially contended, again, that there's a physical as well as a psychic component to this phenomenon. And not surprisingly, the apparent strangeness of the phenomenon is going to be met with a great deal of skepticism. But there are numerous incidents that are very unusual to explain. And, you know, one is involves a shape-shifting UFO that was seen over an Air Force base. Maelstrom Air Force Base that here again deactivated and then reactivated the nuclear missiles. Now, it was strange in the sense that it had that type of effect on missiles, which were believed to be impossible to achieve. But another bizarre space incident was in 1984. 3 cosmonauts of the space station reported, believe it or not, 3 angels with wings and halos outside their window, which paralleled their craft for a long period of time. When they reported that observation to the ground, they thought that there was either a lack of oxygen or space sickness, which caused them to visualize that unusual encounter. But, however, when 3 other cosmonauts docked with that, with the Soyuz ship, they too saw the same thing. Now, talk about high strangeness. I don't know how you explain that. That was documented and reported by the Russian government. Now,
and if it was a lack of oxygen, wouldn't they maybe have seen different things?
Yes, you would expect that to be the case, but those newly 3 cosmonauts who joined them, they saw it on the first day. So again, why would anoxia or that lack of oxygen cause that kind of sighting? People experience anoxia all the time and never have that type of experience. So
when did that happen? Do you remember?
It was 1984.
Wow, I don't recall ever hearing that. That is amazing.
But there are also numerous other incidents by individuals, allegedly, who report that they see a craft land, they see beings float out of it, walking above the land. They point some type of device at them, causing them to become paralyzed. And then they say that they approach them and they grabbed at their legs to pull them into the ship. You get those kinds of incidents. Here again, it's allegedly reported by individuals. So it's hard to know how factual that is. But one interesting issue regarding high strangeness is the UFO ranch, also known as the Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh, absolutely. Done a little bit of research into that myself.
Oh, really? Then you're certainly aware of Dr. Salisbury, who wrote the book. I think it's called the Utah UFO Display.
Yes.
Right. This is a an area in Utah that borders an Indian reservation, where there have been long-standing strange events reported by hundreds of people over many decades, where people see poltergeist events, even Bigfoot, like creatures, orbs, of course,
giant
UFOs,
wolves,
exactly, mutilated cattle, large animals with yellow eyes, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting here is that a scientific investigation occurred whereby they concluded that it isn't as simple as saying that extraterrestrials are doing this. They felt, and it goes back to your point, it's some kind of consciousness. It's always something new and different, something that they said was non-repeatable. They tried to employ the scientific method to try to understand the nature of this type of strangeness, but they admit that science doesn't seem to be amenable to the solution of these types of strange experiences. So there's over 400 or so different kinds of incidents that occurred at this ranch. But the question is, why is this ranch so unique? Why do people have these kind of experiences here? Is this the only place? I don't think so, but I don't know of any other place, although Hazleton, I forget where it is. There was also one other similar place where there have been also unusual issues concerning strange-like behavior.
I think, the San Luis Valley in Colorado, has a lot of activity like that, and a lot of people report strangeness. But certainly, I haven't heard of a place that seems to have had quite the level of activity as the so-called Skinwalker Ranch. Because I had the good fortune to interview or to be able to speak with the Shermans, who were the owners of the ranch back in the 90s, before the ranch was bought by Robert Bigelow. And, spoke with them on the phone, both the husband and the wife, and they were not seeking any kind of attention whatsoever. And what had happened was there was a story written in the Deseret News, and, talking about the ranch. And it was through that article and that reporter that the connection was made between the Shermans and Robert Bigelow, who purchased the ranch. But when I spoke with the Shermans, I remember they were really concerned about their kids that were scared to death, and they just wanted to get out of there. And I think they really sold the property, to the first bidder, who happened to be Robert Bigelow. And then, of course, the National Institute of Discovery Sciences group moved in. And I know that they did publish that book, The Skinwalker Ranch. Colm Kelleher and George Knapp wrote the book, but I don't believe they've released everything that they have found. And that was one thing I wanted to ask you about your organization, that you're going to be doing all this research. Is that research going to be shared with the public?
Oh, indeed. Once all the information is obtained after phase 3 is completed, because individuals who respond to the survey are going to then be interviewed at length, and all of that information, which is substantial in nature, will form the necessary foundation to be analyzed and hopefully written up so that it can be published. So and thus we can properly inform the scientific community as well as the public, certainly, of the nature of the phenomenon. Not that it will provide the specific answers as to the who, what, and whys, but it will provide some additional insight that we may not have at the present time. Because, you watch these shows on TV, Ancient Aliens, Alien UFO Hunters, whatever the names of them are, and they're always debating about, was it a UFO? They analyze specific cases. Yeah, it's entertaining at some level, but, who cares if it's UFO or not? We know the UFOs exist. It doesn't get to the basic question. What is it? And here, I hate to be redundant, but we don't know the who, what, and whys. And these shows, which are popular in nature, don't go in that direction. But they do have a large audience. A lot of people certainly are very interested in it. But nevertheless, yes, you know quite a bit about the Skinwalker Ranch, and it is certainly a topic of great interest. But unfortunately, we don't have any firm conclusions about what is going on, other than it is highly strange in nature. So, what one other type of related issue is the Disclosure Project by Stephen Greer and Stephen Bassett, and through their efforts, which I commend, although it's not going to, in my mind, compel the government to release any information of what they know, if they know anything at all. But testimony, nevertheless, by those who have had experiences with UFOs are very interesting. It is very informative. And anybody can go on YouTube and listen to the testimony provided by the Disclosure Project. It's revealing in many ways, but doesn't answer the basic questions regarding the phenomenon. But through the exopolitical movement, which kind of segues into the Freedom of Information Act, one of the significant documents or memos that was revealed that most ufologists regard as the most compelling evidence to support the belief that the government has covered up their knowledge of UFOs was that provided by a radio engineer, William Smith, of the Canadian Department of Transportation. And he said he had discussions with U.S. officials who were working on flying saucers. And he said it's in a sense, is the most highly classified subjects in the United States government, rating higher than even the hydrogen bomb. And he was told by U.S. officials that flying saucers exist, and that the matter is considered by our government to be of tremendous significance. Now, here again, this is a testimony from one individual who may or may not be accurate in his statements, but nevertheless, it was verified, and it is compelling. Now, here again, that does not surprise me at all. I'm sure the government knows about the phenomenon. What they're doing about it, who knows? But nevertheless, the related conspiracy theory is also something that is related to this issue as well, because is there a cover-up by the government? And there's not a lot of evidence to support that, but there is some.
Well, based on your research into the Freedom of Information Act documents that were, fairly recently released, at least up until that time, they certainly were holding on to that information, whatever that turned out to be, which I think there was quite a bit. Am I right?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, and indeed.
So, I mean, the fact that has now been released sort of makes it a priori that, they were holding it before, so they were covering it up.
Exactly.
So what else is there, or is there something else? I'm sure there must be. I can't believe we have everything. But what was the most compelling evidence that you found just within the FOIA documentation?
I would say the issue regarding the UFOs over the U.S. and Russian Air Force bases. The 1966 incident at the Maelstrom Air Force Base was considered one of the most significant UFO events since they were cited by security personnel. And again, they were confirmed by the U.S. Air Force to have shut down nuclear missiles within seconds of each other with no known cause. They reported, glowing orange disc-shaped objects the size of a football field. It illuminated the missile site. It was confirmed by radar. It was approached by interceptors, and they eventually disappeared at rapid speed, obviously, and from radar as well. And an investigation of that incident, which was, again, declassified, clearly indicated that the computer codes in the missile warheads were altered. An outcome that was believed to be impossible to achieve. But this also happened in Russia as well. But here again, you are right. The FOIA provided information like this that did indicate that there was a cover-up, no question about it. The other document, and of which there are many, was the one I mentioned earlier regarding the pilot Jafari from Tehran, Iran, back in 1976, when he had that close encounter with UFOs. And I addressed that earlier, where all the criteria were met to indicate that it was a valid incident.
Sure.
So that too was very compelling. Even the Halt memo back in 1981, he was a lieutenant colonel with the U.S. Air Force, and that memo, which was rather lengthy in nature, described in great detail the event at Rendlesham Forest, which you alluded to earlier, where UFOs were seen over the U.S. security base, Air Force Base, and Pennington and Burroughs, two servicemen, approached supposedly a black flying saucer in the woods, and Pennington reported touching it and seeing unusual symbols and having received psychic information from apparently beings in the craft of binary codes of zeros and ones, which he wrote down and is now being a subject of great controversy in terms of what that information means. But interestingly, when he saw the physical craft, Burroughs, who was with him, saw just a glowing orb, which here again indicates that this UFO phenomenon can alter one's reality. Two people looking at the same thing report two different things, and that's not that unusual with this phenomenon. That is why there's a potential conscious element to this, as you also mentioned earlier. And here again, we bring in that multiverse or extra-dimensional possible issue, and quantum physics, which touches upon the nature of reality and how our perceptions may in fact be altered in some unknown way by this phenomenon. So one example also of a cover-up, which you mentioned, that was provided through the Disclosure Project, was the testimony by, I believe it was Division Chief of the FAA, John Callahan. He provided information about the well-known incident in I think it was in 1986 regarding a Japanese airliner, and he discussed that close encounter that the airline had, and which was seen by the pilots as well as the passengers. And he discussed that with President Reagan's scientific study group, along with members of the FBI and CIA. And after the discussion, the CIA agent told everybody, according to Callahan, that they were never there and this never happened, and admitted that they were afraid of public panic. Well, if that's true, that wouldn't surprise me. But even in Leslie Kean's book, who was a journalist, she wrote a book, I think it was back in 2010, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials. She contends that she was told that there is an ongoing UFO research agenda that does exist under the Unacknowledged Special Access Program. And these issues, in a sense, serve as a foundation for those involved in that UFO exopolitical movement, because according to that Special Access Program, she was told that there's a number of reliable sources who told her about conversations with high-level military people who say they are aware of a deeply hidden program for UFO research. Now, Nick Pope also said that about a Russian military group that's also studying this phenomenon. But she was also told by Commander Will Miller of the U.S. Navy, who was retired, that according to an email she received from him, and she had provided this information in her book, that Miller said that there is a control group that cannot allow any information on their closely held UFO research to be accessed by anyone outside of those who are cleared by the U.S. Air Force. Now, here again, if that is accurate information, that's quite revealing. But it's interesting, however, that for those who may be in the know of some secret UFO research project that's currently ongoing, it's hard to understand why these people in the know can keep it secret for so long. Although many people through the Disclosure Project and those who are on their deathbed have revealed information about this phenomenon in ways that help to provide somewhat irrefutable evidence that this phenomenon exists, which we know it does. We know it does, but it's interesting to hear it from those who are up close and personal with the phenomenon itself. That lends additional credibility and related validity to the phenomenon. Not that it does answer the primary questions, however. Why are they here? If they are under intelligent control, and if they are, what's their objective? What's their intention? And here again, some claim that the alien abduction phenomenon, if real, provides them the opportunity to collect DNA, since people contend that they retrieve eggs and sperm from those who are abducted. Again, it's alleged information often obtained through regression hypnosis. So,
Well, I tell you, before we get to the end of the show, which we're just almost there, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to get your book, Dr. Davis. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon, and you can also get it on Dr. Davis's website, the UFOphenomenon.com. Boy, I tell you, the time has flown this evening.
Yes, and I've enjoyed this conversation, even though I'm half asleep.
Well, you don't sound like it. You sound fabulous. Also, to the listeners, if you'd like to hear more of Dr. Davis, check out the Inception Radio archives and his recent interview with Dr. Rita Louise on Just Energy Radio. I listened to it today, and it was excellent. So I really enjoyed it. So have a listen to Dr. Rita Louise and Dr. Robert Davis on Just Energy Radio. So we've got about a minute left. And is the next book going to be The Findings of Free, or is there going to be a UFO Phenomenon Part 2?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I would like to contribute as a co-author to the results of the surveys undertaken by the organization Free. However, the issue of life after death intrigues me, as it does everybody. And so I actually thought about doing some additional research into that area and writing possibly a book about that, although certainly we do not have any compelling tangible evidence on that.
I'm all over that. If you decide to do that one, I would love to have you back on to talk about it. Right now, the music's rolling. I want to thank you, Dr. Davis, for joining us. Everyone, get the book, The UFO Phenomenon: Should I Believe, by Dr. Robert Davis. Thanks so much, and good night, everybody.